if you follow us, you get to know that we have great content on TV3. We have Today's Woman. We also have many other related to Day Trash. Of course, we have news and current affairs. We just launched a new one, Perfect Match Extra. The good thing about is when you get onto TV3 Ghana, we have posts or posters put out there. That is indicating you just need to go look out for a QR code, and then you scan that QR code. It will take you to a virtual platform, a streaming site, and you'll be watching Perfect Match Extra 24/7. So just like you have all those reality shows right here, this is our own. Let's celebrate our own. All those housemates we have in Perfect Match Extra, let's see how they're living their lives. Let's also see how they are going through all the difficulties that come up with normal human beings living together. I'm talking about that. Also bring you the latest. So look, they have this household. Everything well stocked. That's all. So please make sure you stick and stay with us right here. Today, I told you that we'll be having some great conversations. It's an ongoing conversation, but it's a conversation today that's going to put matters to a head. And we're talking about us going for this bailout, 3 billion, 600 million we're told that has already been brought to us. But what is the opportunity cost for this? What are we losing? What are we gaining? And so we're going to be joined by some distinguished personalities. Let me first introduce Dr. Edu Owusu-Sarkodie. He is an economist with the Economics Department of the University of Ghana. Very experienced as well. Good morning to you, sir. How are you?
Hi, Roland. Good morning, and good morning to our viewers. I'm good. How are you too?
I'm well. I could see from your face that you had a good weekend.
Yes, but full of talks, sharing ideas about the IMF on
I know, right?
media stations. I call it the national service, so it's fine.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. When you're an academician, that's what happens. You do it for free. Not like the politicians who do it for a course. We'll see how that goes. Forget about my rantings. And also next to me, a member of the Ibuakwa North constituency of the New Patriotic Party. He has confirmed to me he will be going for the primaries when the nominations are opened early 2024. Ibuakwa North constituency member of the New Patriotic Party is right here. Palgrave Boachi Dankwa is a regular on the show. Palgrave, good morning to you.
Good morning, Roland. It's good to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good too. Do you have a funeral?
No, I don't.
Okay, it's just part of your
beautiful
fashion.
color.
As for you, you don't mind. That's great. He's also a great missionary man of God, so it helps in a perspective. He currently is the government spokesperson on governance and security. And then also Eduji Tamaklo. Eduji, your first name is Godwin, eh?
Yep.
God and Win. Eduji Tamaklo. So which constituency are you, or you don't do constituencies yet?
I'm in Domi
Kwabenya. That's right. That's how they started. All right. So, but you're not contesting for the primaries?
We are done with our primaries.
Okay.
Sorry. We'll land this morning away from the beach.
All right. So,
we have our parliamentary
I have Nimani. You're based in the UK. Good morning to you as well. Ras Kotuka, all of you. William Bechi, and all of you tend to watch our streams on Facebook. Make sure you like us, you share as well as you're watching the stream. Carl Nidomenyo, as well as your wife, Angela, and the rest of the family. You're based in Charlotte, United States of America. You're a regular watcher of the show. I have to say that thank you for always being with us. God bless all of you. But now, let's take you through so far what we'll be getting. And we'll put a slide on the screens. 3 billion. And this is going to be the breakdown. Because I want all of us to become conversant with this. So the 3 billion we have now signed up for, we have disbursement periods. It's going to be in 7 tranches. First, this month, we have $600 million. We're talking $600 million. And then in November this year, we're going to have $600 million. That makes it 1.2 billion. And then May next year, May 2024, the election year, let's say by this time next year, when just like you're seeing Kumewu, NDC, NPP are all busy CPP, all of them are giving us messages about why we need to vote for them or not. We're going to receive 360 million. And then 3 or 4 months down the lane of that same year, 2024, we're going to have 360 million. And then after the elections, and we're all resting, we have a government in place. After the transition, we're going to receive 360 million. That will be May 2025. Then 360 million, another one coming in November 2025, and then 26. All right. I'm hoping that we'll be able to go out of the IMF by, just like the way we were able to do for the last one, maybe before May 2026. Oh, what do you say?
Roland, a very good morning to you and to your beautiful viewers.
Right.
And cherished constituents of Achimea-Boakwa North. I bring special greetings to you, especially to the constituency chairman, Alhaji Seidu, and the rest of the executive electoral areas, second vice, Nelson, and all the very good people of Boakwa North. We greet you this morning. Roland, our government has been in very difficult circumstances from the second term. And we've gone through a high-level conversation rather from the 1st of July 2022, when we started the IMF program in terms of negotiations. We reached the staff level agreement in December of 2022, and we began 2023 at the backbench of December with the domestic debt exchange program. Individual bondholders, pension bondholders went for the spring meeting, and just about a week ago, the IMF approved $3 billion. Now, the objective of the facility is to do 3 key things. I think that the first is to restore macroeconomic stability within the country, and also the second is to ensure that our debts become sustainable over the long period. And the third is to lay a foundation for higher and more inclusive growth. So there are close to about 6 things that we are looking to do in terms of the IMF program. Debt sustainability, fiscal consolidation. You are aware how our debt has risen over the years. We can appreciate and agree that our government has also added on to our already existing debts, which has evidence to prove of what we have used those loans to do in this country. Fiscal consolidation, strengthening monetary and exchange rate policies. You recall, as of last year, we had the cedi depreciating. Almost every single hour, the cedi was depreciating against the US dollar. I mean, we want to be able to strengthen and consolidate that. In recent times, the cedi has become more stable against the US dollar. We also would want to build strong financial institutions with what is coming, ensure that we have macro critical structural reforms. And today is the Global Day of World Anti-Terrorism, and so we would use an aspect of the funds that is coming to maintain peace and security within the sub-region and even in Ghana, and then also for economic growth and transformation. One of the key things that this IMF program is going to do is to ensure that we protect the life and livelihood of the poor people and the very vulnerable people that have given us an opportunity to serve. And so further on to other conditionalities that comes with IMF program. This particular IMF program for our country is going to protect the life and livelihood of the poor and the vulnerable. And you recall that in the 2023 budget that was read in November 2022, there was an add-on to our LEAP, which is our livelihood empowerment program against poverty. And then also there's an add-on to school feeding in terms of the amount of money that we have been given. Might not be too much, but if you look at the percentages in terms of the number of people that are being fed on a regular basis with hot meals from our government, I think that it can be considered government's own efforts in ensuring that we are alleviating the plight of the poor and the vulnerable. And so we welcome this $600 million US dollars, which is the Bank of Ghana account at the close of business day on Friday. We are in no doubt that following our enhanced program that we've presented to IMF, over these 6 months would be able to use judiciously that 600 million US dollars. And after the reevaluation of the program, the November tranches will also come. And so it's going to be coming in 7 tranches, as you stated. But at every end of every tranche, there's going to be a review of our enhanced program to be able to see how we have effectively used the IMF money, and then also to the benefit of the Ghanaian people.
Well, before I go to Eduji, Dr. Owusu-Sarkodie, if you look at that 146-page document from the IMF, it has talk about all those discussions they've had with the government of Ghana, of course, led by the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. And that also indicates that we had pre-existing fiscal vulnerabilities before the onset of COVID and the war in Russia and Ukraine. Perhaps, should we have been made available, or should we have been made to know how the discussions went, and then what was in our documents? Is it the EPEC, or how do we call it?
Yes, it's the enhanced program.
Okay.
Yeah, EFC.
EPEC. Okay, so should we have been made available, maybe you, the academicians and the bipartisan people, the multilateral agency, the CSO, etc., so that we know what currently is in it, apart from what we have from the IMF?
Hi, let me say good morning to my colleagues in the studio again. Edogin was my mate in economics class, and then Pargrave was my senior. He was ahead of myself and Edogin just 1 year.
Eduji was your mate?
Yeah, he was my mate.
University of Ghana?
Economics class.
Economics department.
I'm sure Dr. Bendiako will really be happy to see the two of us, because
and then Pargrave was your what?
Pargrave was a year ahead of us.
Was a year ahead of you people?
Yes.
Hey, so it's a triangle. What is happening?
Yeah. So today's a family matter.
So the politicians caused the problem, and you, the academicians, try to tell them that we have to do right by ourselves.
Yes, we have to tell them that.
All right. So you go on.
Okay.
You go on.
Okay. So the pre-existing conditions, we have been talking about it even before the IMF program or before the IMF document. So in other words, your question is asking about the vulnerabilities that we faced before COVID and before the war, because the document is saying that the external shocks have exacerbated, so that's the key word, exacerbated the pre-existing fiscal vulnerabilities. And so, yes, we've been talking about it. The government should have, told Ghanaians more about the pre-existing conditions. But like I'm saying, anytime you call me or any media station call me, we talk about these pre-existing vulnerabilities. Number one is the debt. Before 2006, that's it, between 2006 and 2019, that was before the COVID, the growth rate of the public debt outpaced the growth rate of internal revenue. In other words, as a country, after 2006, when we were given breathing space by the HIPC relief, we ended up paying attention to more borrowing than paying attention to internally generated funds. And so we spent beyond our means and we kept borrowing, to the extent that by 2019, our interest payment to revenue ratio was 33%. This was 2019. It was one of the highest in the world. And there were other vulnerabilities that we all have been talking about, the structural rigidities. We have also talked about the rigidities in the budget, the fact that the government spends its entire revenue and grants on 3 main items, i.e. compensation of employees, interest payment, and then earmarked funds, and after which all the revenue is gone. And these were all existing conditions between 2013. It started in 2013. These rigidities in the budget started in 2013, and before COVID, they had been with us. There are a number of issues like the capital account. Our cedi was somewhat depreciating against the major trading currencies before COVID. And one of the major contributors was that sometimes people say that because we import more than we export, yes, our import bill is high, but since the first quarter of 2017, we have been exporting more than we import as a country. So we should not be experiencing cedi depreciation that much. So it actually tells us that the problem is not in the current account or the trade balance. The problem is with the capital account. Just the first 9 months of last year, we were told by the Bank of Ghana that we exported $4.2 billion of gold, $3.8 billion of crude oil, and $1.7 billion of cocoa. Just these first three items command 83% of total exports. The first three will give us $9.7 billion. This is just sitting in the books. What comes to the government as a physical cash is less than $4 billion. So the problem actually, as I've identified, is in the capital account. The outflow of funds versus the inflow of funds. And of course, we can add the unemployment rate of 13.4% before COVID and all that. So yes, as a country, we should have been talking about this and we should be dealing with this. And I'm saying that some of us in academia and civil society organizations have been talking about these pre-existing conditions and have made recommendations. In fact, one of our key recommendations, which would take a long term to achieve, but it will help us in a long-term transformation of our economy, is the ownership of our natural resources. I just mentioned to you that we exported $4.2 billion of gold and $3.8 billion of crude oil, and only about 30% of this amount came to the government of Ghana. In other words, the remaining 70% or so went to the mining companies. And so we did our analysis and we concluded that if Ghana behaved like Botswana, which commands 55%, or Nigeria, that commands 52% of their natural resources, against our 16% participation interest, if we raise it from 16 to the Botswana level or Nigeria level of at least 55%, government of Ghana will be able to rake in $5 billion revenue from the extractive sector every year, additional revenue every year. $5 billion. Yes, $5 billion additional revenue every year. But the difficulty here is that for you to increase your participation interest, you must increase your investment in that sector. So it is something we should have done right from the word go, but we haven't done it. And we keep reporting huge sums of money in our balance of payment, and yet about 30% of that money comes to the government of Ghana and 70% goes away. Another problem with the exchange rate vulnerability is the lack of retention law, which some of us have talked about for years, that we have our multinational companies with us. We welcome them, but sometimes we should negotiate with them so they can retain some of their profits in the country so that, this repatriation could be reduced. Now we talk about inflation too. Inflation, as we know, before these external shocks, were also largely cost-push inflation. And in recent times, the Bank of Ghana's monetary financing of the government budget has also fueled the inflation, the demand side, added the demand side of inflation to the cost-push side of inflation. So the cost of production, as I'm saying, has been very high in terms of interest rate, in terms of transportation, in terms of utility bills, etc., etc. These are the pre-existing conditions that we should have dealt with them as a country. But I will end by saying that, yes, there were other inroads, like the inflation rate was single digit. Government was making efforts to try to stabilize the economy and increase investment to create jobs. I have a friend at GIPC who has told me that even in the midst of our difficulties, we have experienced influx of investment into our country. And the first reason they cite is our political stability. And I think that we must all clap for ourselves and comment and be happy that as Ghanaians that we have achieved political stability over the years since 1993 or 1992 elections. And that is something we must smile at.
Okay. Dr. Usu-Sarkodie, one of the key things you find in this document by the IMF are indication of tax rebates that we give to all these foreign direct investors, right? So it's problematic, that's one. And two, where these investments are going, usually are in extractives and some of those other sectors, right? Where local content participation is very low, and then retention, as far as returns into the economy, are also very low. And these are some of the key issues that you talk about, Dr. Usu-Sarkodie. Going forward, what should we be doing in that direction? Because we talk about the huge volumes of direct investment, exports, but you find that they are in cocoa, they are in oil, etc. They all add to the numbers, but they don't add to the local economy or local content. Just quickly for me in 3 minutes, if you can.
Yeah, sure. The tax exemptions or rebates have cost this country averagely $5 billion cedis every year.
Yeah.
5 billion cedis every year. And it must be re-looked at. If you want to give rebates or exemptions or relief to a company, that company must have local content. That company should be interested in the manufacturing sector, because it is the manufacturing sector, in addition to the agri sector, that have the highest employment elasticity of output. In other words, these are the sectors that can employ more, and then when people are employed, they can have their incomes and they can, afford basic needs. So rebates or relief should be given to manufacturing companies, local manufacturing companies, or even if it's foreign, must have local partners in areas that can increase our manufacturing base and create jobs. Anything apart from this, I am not for it. So it must be looked at. It's costing this country so much, and yet the benefit that we are getting is so marginal. And I think that we have to sit down as a country and redesign these rebates and areas that we want to channel them, and even how much, because sometimes the exemptions come in terms of the duration. So you can, in other words, for example, you must be in existence for the next 5 years or 10 years and you not pay any tax. That must be reduced.
That's it.
Also about the rate. So you give them 0, you give them 1% or 5%. That can also be re-looked at. So you are right. We have to look at this because it's costing us, and yet the benefits are marginal.
Okay.
And it is not helping us at all.
All right. Eddie J, so how do we come on to stream with this? We know now it's been confirmed we had pre-existing conditions, but at the end of the day, what are we losing? What is the opportunity cost?
Okay, so once again, good morning to our cherished viewers, and good morning to my colleague, Dr. Usu-Sarkodie. He rightly pointed out, we're in the same class from first year to we left the University of Ghana, and our senior here. You see, the question has been, what really is the opportunity cost for an IMF program at this time? It's instructive to make the point that if we had gone to the IMF a bit earlier, the opportunity cost would have been different. Now, there was an opportunity for this government to have gone to the IMF immediately after the 2020 election, but they failed. In their usual character, their boastful character, arrogant posturing, when the opportunity came for them to join the IMF immediately after the 2020 election, they failed. What they rather told us was that we were a proud people and that we were not going to the IMF. I recall vividly Mr. Akufo-Addo immediately 2019 making the point that Ghana was not going to the IMF again. Having made all this noise, today, we have had to go to the IMF in an ambulance. And you know, when you go to your physician in an ambulance, your physician will be forced to impose very harsh conditions on you. And so the situation where we went to the IMF in intensive care units, this is what we are going to get from the IMF. Already the IMF has indicated that as part of the conditions to meet this $3 billion whatever, one of the things that is given to us is the quarterly tariff adjustment for both electricity and water. So you notice that we had applied to the IMF in July the 1st. By September 2022, as part of the conditions, we had already done 27% increase in water and electricity. By December 2022, we had done 29%. A few days ago, tariff had increased by 18% to take effect from 1st July. So for a businessman who is planning your budgets, you are having to pay cumulatively 75% on your electricity. That is the opportunity cost. So that but for this IMF program, you could possibly be paying less. But today, by reason of the ineptitude of the Bawumia Akufo-Addo administration, you are having to pay 75% on water and electricity. The record is there. In fact, if you note, in 2018, there was the need for government, consistent with the timelines, to have allowed for the adjustment of electricity tariffs. Then Akufo-Addo Bawumia took the decision that ahead of the 2020 election, they were not going to increase. And so there had been significant under-recovery in the energy sector. Because remember that the independent power producers are producing power for you. The tariffs have been put in dollar terms. There had been massive depreciation of your local currency. It comes as overhead. But you see, ECG sells currency to you and I in cedis. So the foreign differential losses, they keep it in their books. There's no money to pay. And this had resulted in massive commitment to the independent power producers. Someone must definitely pay. The IMF is saying that because we want you to get to the point that you can fully recover how much goes into production, all the
Is that what
line
we're seeing
losses.
in recent increments?
Absolutely. So cumulatively, from September till now, we have done 75%. And that is not going to stop. Again, the IMF is saying that if government can even employ the current labor force, it should be 0.5%. 0.5%. That's dangerous. Because you see, remember that unemployment is a national security conversation. So where, by reason of your ineptitude, your recklessness, you have put this country in a situation where you have to go to the IMF in an ambulance. What is going to happen is that the IMF is saying that you can't employ as you want.
But
So
it's also because it's a cost issue. Because when
No, that's where I'm going. So because of the wage bill, the associated increase in the wage bill, the IMF is saying that even if you want to do any kind of employment, it should not be more than 0.5%, even less than 1% of your current labor force. Again, the IMF is saying that, look, you can't even increase the salaries of workers. Now get this. This government has consistently done 4%, 7% increment in worker salary. You know that. Now, when you increase worker salary by 4%, but you are dealing with inflation as 45%, to the point that it even went up to 53%, what it means is that even if you increase the salaries of workers, immediately inflationary pressures will knock it off. The worker becomes worse off. Now, even more important, look at our cocoa farmers. A cocoa farmer during the NDC era could possibly buy maybe 4 bundles of iron sheet for the purpose of roofing. Today, that same amount cannot buy even 1 bundle of iron
Are we going to
sheet.
be worse off in the coming years?
In fact, there is nothing from the IMF program. Everything shows that cost of living is going to what? Be very terrible. And that is why in all of these conversations, remember that as part of the IMF condition, government is upset. They had to come out with 3 new tax handles to generate about 3 billion Ghana cedis just a few days ago. At the point where GUTA, Association of Ghana Industries, freight forwarders, among others, told government of Ghana that these 3 tax handles are going to make things terrible for us. Government refused because of this IMF program. You see, if you recall, H.E. John Dramani Mahama at the Ghana at the Crossroad, program gave an indication that, listen, Akufo-Addo, stop the arrogance posturing. Rapidly go to the IMF then. They had put all their hope on e-levy. And so when e-levy failed them, they had no other option to now go to the IMF cap in hand. And that is what has created a problem for the economy now. Look, and I've always made this point. Roland, do you know that one of the reasons why they are begging the IMF for this amount of money is that they want their books to look good so they can go back to the Eurobond market? Because you see, immediately this government came to power, they came with a borrowing mindset, possibly because the finance minister was going to benefit more directly. But look at what they have been doing consistently. From 2017, they did 2.25 billion Franklin Templeton bond. The next year, they did another 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion. In fact, the only time that they could not borrow was 2022. All because the various credit ratings have downgraded us. So they could not go back. So if you note...
So why? Because the market was close to us?
Because our debt numbers were not looking good. And the investors were getting concerned. And Akufo-Addo will not show any form of, corresponding behavior. Do you know that at the time when the economy was getting to a crash point, that was when Akufo-Addo decided to meet his childhood fantasies of flying luxurious private jets.
Why do you describe it as childhood fantasies?
Yeah, because you see, it doesn't make sense.
You didn't listen to the defense minister when he came before Parliament and said it was because
ignore him. As for him,
of the
no. As for
he's the defense minister.
Listen, as for that, our defense minister, ignore him. Look, at the time when he was justifying it, the president had used the same presidential jet to fly from Accra to Uganda for the inaugural ceremony of Yoweri Museveni. It cost 6 hours. But the president said he could not do 6 hours to London. But he can do that to Uganda. So ignore him. The same private jet. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Was it not the same man who said the president needed a place where he can bath and refresh in the air? This, and you call this a defense minister. Our people will say, Namaste. Look, there are serious matters that we need to look at. In the sense that for the past 6 years, the Akufo-Addo administration took upon itself a certain borrowing culture because the finance minister's company.
What do you mean by borrowing culture?
A borrowing culture in the sense that consistently in 6 years, they have done $13 billion in bonds. Eurobond alone, $11 billion.
DJ, you have 3 minutes, man. Please.
Do you know that in 8 years of Mills Mahama Emisata, the overall bond purchase was just 3.5 billion. In 6 years, Akufo-Addo has done $11 billion in Eurobond plus the 2.25 Franklin Templeton bond, making it 13 billion. Now you see the painful aspect is this. If you have borrowed this much and you have corresponding capital expenditure project to correspond with how much you borrowed, Ghanaians soon have a problem. When the Mills Mahama government went for the 3 billion Chinese CDB loan, if you recall, That 3 billion, they used 1 billion to, to establish the Atuabo gas project. Do you know that by simple reason of the Atuabo gas project, we are doing $350 million savings annually? That's how much we would have been using to buy gas, to buy LPG, among other things. That is what you grow an economy with. Look, one of the visionary things John Mahama did was that he brought the 2.5% value-added tax, right, and established what is now known as the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, GIF. The whole idea of the fund is that you can support local, local construction, whether roads, major projects, among other things, so that the fund becomes the owner of those vehicles. So you want to do an interchange. The fund will put the money in there. When you are done, you either toll it so that the money will come. When this government came, in their usual populace, without thinking, short-sightedness, one morning we woke up only for the, what we call it, the roads minister to say he's stopping the collection of tolls.
But it was because they were waiting, or as a substitute, introducing e-levy, for which we're told that
Roland,
it was frustrated in being implemented.
Roland, at the
approval process,
look, at the basic level, we were told, growing up, that never put all your eggs in what? One basket. These people who claim they have the men, decided that even before they will get the benefit of e-levy, they will scrap the tools. After they've gone 360 degrees,
but we're told that the e-levy was
when the Gans say seke, when they say seke, do you understand? The Gans, when they say seke, they went and then came back and said, no, we'll reintroduce the tools again. The point I'm making is that we have elected a bunch of inept, corrupt, reckless people to manage the affairs of this country. Our solution really is not an IMF program. Do you know why?
Why?
Because the overall amount from IMF is just 3 billion. So far, we've gotten 600. Do you know that last year, the Bank of Ghana gave this inept administration in excess of $3 billion?
Well, according to the IMF program and document.
Now they are asking for zero financing from the Bank of Ghana. I am hoping that this time round, Governor Addison will have the balls to look Akufo-Addo in the face.
What do you mean he will have the balls?
No, I mean,
you also hold your fists.
So far, Governor Addison has demonstrated that he's just a poodle for Akufo-Addo and Kenoforiata.
He's a very competent. And let me tell you, track record
let me tell you something. 30 seconds. No, 30 seconds. Do you know that as we speak, look at the composition of the board of Bank of Ghana. No, look at the composition of the board of Bank of Ghana. And that is where we need to look at.